Chris Ballard, Colts. Once again, Chris Ballard has kind of went out there and put a controversial statement out there in the world. Chris Ballard has said that he thinks Laiatu Latu was the best defensive rookie this year. Gotta disagree. I'm sure McHenry, you disagree as well. I mean, we see other guys like Quinion Mitchell, Cooper Dejean, even that safety from San Francisco. He had good a really good year. I think it was Malik I don't know. It's a weird name, but
Mufasa.
yeah. There we go. But Quinion Mitchell, Dejean, Verse. There were so many players that had really, rookies that had really good years. I mean, Latu, let's go through some of the numbers. Latu had 4 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 38 pressures, and 71.5 PFF grade, which is by far not as much compared to Chop Robinson and Jared Verse. I think I forgot to bring up Chop Robinson. But Chop had 7 sacks, and he had a boatload of pressures. He had like 50 some, a 70 PFF grade. So you could say Latu had a better PFF grade than Chop Robinson. But I mean, the sacks, I would take those. He had more sacks. And Verse was absolutely incredible. I mean, 6 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 77 pressures. It's just once again we see Chris Ballard going out here and kind of, being a little stubborn. Maybe doesn't really want to admit that there were other defensive players that had better years than Laiatu Latu. Latu had a good year, but he had a rookie caliber year, if you know what I'm saying. I'm not being disrespectful. It's unpersonal. He had a rookie caliber type of year, while Verse and Chop Robinson, I would say, more so didn't really look like rookies. And yeah, I kind of compared the same position to Latu, but you could also say, like, in general, Quinion Mitchell and Cooper Dejean were better.
Yeah, and it might be partially because they were, on the much more successful team. It's allowing them to look a little bit better. But I think your comparison with Verse and Chop Robinson, that's a very good apples to apples comparison, right? So even more so on Verse, because he was sitting there and you could have taken him like pretty much any of these guys if you had the right evaluation. Now, that's not to say that Latu is not going to be the best defensive player out of these guys. He can. Like, obviously, there's more time left here, and we're just talking about the first year. And the comment that Ballard made during the draft, which is well documented, where he talked about, hey, we just got the best defensive player in the draft. So is that actually accurate, I guess, is what we're trying to say. And so far, that's proving not to be true, which has happened quite a bit with Ballard, right? In his player evaluations. He tends to have some that are on and correct, and just about as many that are off. And like the big misses are, I think, what we're concerned about here, because everybody's going to have misses, and everybody's going to have players that don't perform up to the level they expect, and that's just common sense. But it tends to happen with Ballard in some pretty important positions, right? Cornerback, quarterback, defensive end. Like, some of the premium positions, man, are the ones that he just seems to not be able to get right. So especially you got to at least have either quarterback or defensive end locked down. No questions asked. You got to have one of those two. And he's really had a hard time getting either one of those. And really cornerback too. I mean, you got to have a shutdown guy. It's a passing league now. So if you don't have a shutdown corner and you don't have a good defensive end, and we have good ones. It's not saying they're not. It's just we don't have anybody who's a standout.
Yeah.
We don't have it. Like, you had DeForest Buckner, but he's an inside guy who's not always able to, like, provide pressure up the middle, because he also defends the run pretty well, right? So he's kind of he's a two-way player. But and no disrespect to DeForest Buckner at all. He's an amazing pass rusher at his position. But those inside defensive guys usually don't get a whole lot of sacks, high sack numbers typically. Yeah, it's just, some of that some of those evaluations aren't making sense, and it's happened over time. I think a lot of people see it. That's why Ballard has his reputation for being stubborn, his nickname, Bargain Bin Ballard, and all that good stuff. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jared Verse was the one that I wanted before the draft last year, and so to see Jared Verse play so well and to see Latu kind of falling behind, that didn't sit well with me personally. Chop Robinson, now he was probably evaluated a little bit lower than those two guys to start the draft, so you can kind of understand maybe taking Latu or Verse before him. But you know, there's another player that you kind of you let go by, and then the Colts have a need at cornerback, and Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper Dejean end up playing at a Super Bowl level, and you passed on both those guys to go get Latu, who's still a question mark. So
Yep.
it's like, man, not only did you miss, not only did you potentially not take the right defensive end, you also decided not to take a cornerback, which you kind of needed and still do.
Yeah.
And two of the guys you could have taken end up performing at a Super Bowl level. So yeah, that's not looking too good now, is it?
No. And I felt like cornerback was a must draft in round 1. I felt like cornerback was a much bigger need. Don't get me wrong.
You weren't the
Um,
only one. Yeah.
yeah, I thought our defensive line could have used extra work, especially the edge. I mean, we know Grover, Stewart, and we know Buckner hold it down the middle, but it kind of felt like we were lacking in the on the outside. Even though it seemed like we got a lot of pressure and we had pretty good sack numbers for a couple of years there. It feels like it's way too inconsistent, especially when we play the better lines. Yeah, but at the end of the day, our cornerbacks were a much bigger need. They had almost zero experience. But I'm sure Chris Ballard was sitting back and saying, I mean, he proved that. I mean, he proved it that he thought that his guys were the better option than drafting a guy like Quinyon Mitchell or drafting a guy like Cooper Dejean. So once again, we're seeing Chris Ballard's stubbornness and Chris Ballard's poor decision making on impact positions, on premium positions, take a toll.
Yeah, and you passed on guys who were obvious starters at a position of need to draft a guy who was essentially a backup.
Yeah.
Because before Ebukam got hurt, Latu was the backup. So you didn't draft the cornerback, which you really needed. You went and drafted a guy who was a backup. He ended up not being the best player in the draft so far, and the guys you passed on end up going to the Super Bowl and winning. So yeah, not a great look. Hopefully Ballard starts to make some changes this year. I think if he can, like a lot of us, if we can overcome some of our weaknesses, we're going to be more successful in life. That's all of us, man. And
Right.
Ballard needs to not only recognize his weaknesses but address them. And if he does a good job at that, he's got a chance to make some changes. Take the things that he's doing well, like about some of the player evaluation, some of the contracts, some of the being frugal at times, but add a little something like let guys go, because I think when you keep too many guys, you're not holding people accountable. You're not keeping your team on edge. You're not having those guys be a little bit more nervous about having their job, which usually if you're like, man, if I don't perform today I might get fired. Well, you're going to go in and give a lot better effort than if you think, oh, I've got this made, and I'm already paid, and I'm sitting over here in the shade drinking lemonade, like
Yeah.
right? Like
Me-
there's a whole different mindset there. So you can't just be buddy buddy with everybody. Like, you know, sometimes your kids grow up to be teenagers and you got to start, and enacting some discipline on them. And yeah, man, some of those guys don't need it, like a DeForest Buckner. He's a natural leader. Some of those guys, I think Kenny Moore, he's a natural leader. Um, Michael Pittman, He's a natural leader. He's a warrior. I like his mentality and his attitude. There's some guys on the team that are worth keeping around, but anybody who talks more than they actually walk. If you talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk, you don't need those guys around. Those guys aren't true leaders. Some people who like to mouth off and do that kind of stuff. Those guys don't set a good example, man. They don't. That's not the example you want to set to the young guys either. It's just not. Next play. That's the most important thing. So you want those kind of guys. So, but yeah, man.
Exactly.
What's your take on it?
It's just I really like what you brought up with the with the competition factor and the leader factor. I mean, some guys are natural leaders. Some guys are naturally going to get up and perform and compete in the highest degree that they can every single day, no matter what. But you're right. Without the Chris Ballard even preached that competition is very important. Remember, like right in the beginning, Chris Ballard, Frank Reich, you know how much they were preaching to bring in more competition. So I don't really understand where we're at now because
That's where I say you can't just talk the talk. You got to walk the walk.
exactly, because now look at the cornerback room. They all seem like they're Chris Ballard's guys. They're all practice squad guys, and Chris Ballard is trying to be right. He's like you know what I'm trying to say? Like he's trying to be right on his own. Stubborn.
He
That's
sticks
it.
with guys a little too long sometimes because he thinks they're going to turn out. He thinks they're going to do something in a year or two, and it's
And
and
then
some of these
before you know
guys,
it,
they're not.
yeah,
They're not going to make it, and he needs to cut ties a little earlier.
yep.
And bringing most of your guys back, that's a great idea, but I don't like how he brought everybody back to last year. Especially, you could have brought in somebody at safety. You need to do something there.
Yeah.
And even though Cross played well and Julian Blackman was okay, it's just they neither
Are you
one of those guys were at a really high level.
right? So I guess Chris Ballard is sitting back and saying, "I'm satisfied." That's what I kind of see from it, unfortunately.
Yeah, not going far enough.
Yeah,
And settling for good is good enough kind of thing. Yeah.
exactly. And it feels like every year we kind of have hype, in a way. Yeah, it's probably Homer hype in a lot of ways, but still, it's
And
it's it's. Go ahead.
you got to plan on guys getting hurt.
Yeah,
It's going to happen. That he had a safety go down. He had a defensive end go down. He had some players that our starting cornerback went down. But the problem with your starting cornerback is that he was young. He had already been injured. And then the guys you're going to bring in after Juju was, they're like, I don't mind Womack and like
Jalen Jones,
Jalen Jones are not too bad, but they're also
but they're not what you want. That's not the goal.
Womack's a little bit short. Jalen Jones is okay, but he can't. His tackling needs work. He's a little bit slight, like he gets pushed around a little bit, that kind of thing. He's a little thin. He's probably going to add weight as he gets older and be better there, and hopefully get better at the tackling part.
I
But
think
man,
Jalen Jones. I think Jalen Jones can be a nice number 2, but a number 1, absolutely not.
yeah, I was thinking either even coming in as the replacement guy, like you have your 2 starters, and you have him coming in to rest whoever the starters are. If that was your situation, that would be a good situation for everybody.
Right. Exactly. But it just really stinks to see that Chris Ballard, like, he's too hung up on his own guys, man, and it holds the rest of the team back.
So I see like Womack kind of the same way, where if he's a guy coming in off the bench, basically, then that's a good situation. So we were kind of missing, we were definitely missing at least one other starter. I think Juju definitely has the ability and the talent to be a starter, but you really, because of his skill set, you're going to have his number 2 guy be a little faster. Like you really need a speed cover guy opposite of Juju, because
Yeah.
Juju is a little bit bigger. He's a bigger, lankier guy who's real physical as a cornerback too. Like he's not going to get pushed around and stuff, right? He's very physical. So I like that about him. You need his skill set and his talent in certain areas and certain times, but you need a guy opposite of him who kind of does the opposite thing.
Yeah, you need a good
Right.
complement piece.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's a great word for it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I was thinking of something else before, but I lost it. I mean, basically what we've said here with Chris, I mean, it's been basically the same throughout his entire tenure. It's not like he's changed, and it's not a good start after he just had a presser saying, "I'm going to change." The way I've done things has not been okay. And, he's kind of expressed to himself that he hasn't done a good job.
Right.
Well,
It's a lot
we're
easier to
already.
say than to do on
It
that change
is.
stuff. Yeah.
It is. That's very true.
For all of us.
Yeah. It is. It is. But he's getting paid a crap ton of more
Right.
money. um.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
getting
So I
paid
guess.
for that change, buddy. You need
Yeah.
to strap down and lock and load. Get ready.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
it's time it's time to go. Right now is the time. We're marching out. The battle is in front of us, and some of us are not coming back.
Yeah. Just like tight end. Like,
Mhm.
look at how long tight end's been a problem for, and he's been counting on his own guys. Yeah, he's invested a little bit into tight end. Like Jelani Woods didn't work out. I thought Jelani Woods would have been good. I liked him coming out of college from Virginia Tech, but he can't stay healthy. Um, Will Mallory,
Right? You never
he's
know. Like sometimes these guys get hurt for a year or two and then never get hurt again. So, and sometimes the opposite is usually true. but
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, Jelani Woods still has a chance there. But there's nothing against maybe go ahead and getting somebody else. But yeah, you haven't filled that position at all.
right.
Right.
That Penn State tight end. A lot of people think, a lot of people are connecting him to the Colts. He's a good
Yeah.
run blocker and a good pass catcher. So
He
that'd be
is.
nice.
My opinion on that though is is that he was on a very good team this year, and Loveland was on a very good team last year. And Loveland did not get the hype this year because his team was not as good. I think Loveland is just as good. To be honest, like if you would get Loveland later in the draft because he doesn't have the hype, like say you get him even in the second round, then I say take somebody else in the first round and then go get Loveland in the second round if that's the case.
Yeah, I would say target corner.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because that way you get kind of a 2-for-1, right? Like instead of just getting the best tight end possibly, well, you get a tight end who's probably just as good, and then you also get another player. Um, Obviously, if you got Warren in the first round, you'd get somebody else in the second round. But I think your potential to get just as good of a player in Loveland versus Warren, I think they're even. I just think one guy was on a lot better team this year, so people have just the uh, the last impression kind of thing from this last season, right? They're like, oh, Warren's better because he was on Penn State and they went to the championship. Like
Yeah,
yeah. Well, if Loveland had a much better quarterback this season, what would his stats be like? So
true.
you know,
Good points.
yeah.
Good points.
And I think there's a couple other guys. I know I forget the third tight end. There's a third tight end too who might be just as good as the other guys. He went to a small school. So yeah, I don't know about taking tight end early in the draft. Like I think we need some other position because you got Jelani Woods there who might end up being good, and Will Mallory is just fine as a speed tight end. He's just young and getting better. But if Jelani comes back and plays just fine, why would you want to spend, like the number 15 pick or whatever it is on a tight end?
Yeah,
So, and you could probably pick up a tight end an all around tight end somewhere like a free agent tight ends are something you could get a viable one in free agency. I don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then hope that Jelani gets good enough where he makes a breakout and he stays healthy.
Yeah,
That could
and
be a
then
play, right? Just one way to look at it. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that we take tight end in the first round.
yeah, I like your takes though. I think another position like cornerback or a more premium position is more important. I've never been huge on taking tight ends in the first round. We just see it, the first year they don't really pan out. Tight ends typically take a little while to develop. They have a lot on their plate. They got to run block, they got to run routes, they got to catch the ball. They got a lot on their plate. Um, but yeah, I think we need to go for a more premium position like a cornerback.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree with you.
Cornerback, defensive end, quarterback. Anytime you can pick up one of those three, and then be a solid player in the first round, that's what you want to do. You gotta nail those three, and then everybody else kind of comes after that. I do like picking players for the defensive and offensive lines. I put that very high on the priority list as well. But and definitely like inside out in a sense, because the further you get away from the ball, in my opinion, the less important they are as a player, right? So like obviously your running back and quarterback are super important because they touch the ball the most, right? Whoever touches the ball the most are the most important players. Period. End of conversation.
Yeah.
So your running back, your quarterback, and then everybody else, right? Your defensive ends, because your defensive ends pressure the quarterbacks and all that stuff. A lot of people say defensive end after quarterback. I'd argue that with running back because whoever touches the ball the most, those are the most important players. Now, then whoever affects the ball the most. So then you go over to defensive end, cornerback, right? Um, and in all fairness, like this day and age, you do need a good quarterback to win most of the time. It doesn't look like a defense. Especially here lately, is our defenses aren't good enough to just win the Super Bowl on their own. So you do need a good quarterback to help you, especially with the rules and it being a passing league now versus a running league like it was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, man. That's
All
pretty much
right.
my take on that. You got anything else?
No, I think that's all I got. I don't want to keep saying a whole lot of nothing. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm starting to say the same things. I don't really want to. Me myself, I don't really want to keep on dragging it out. But
No, you're fine, man.
I think,
Go with what you feel.
yeah, that's all. Yeah, that's all for me though. That's all for me. And then that's
All
all
right.
for you.
Yeah, I'll get us out of here, man. Just glad to be here and be able to talk about sports, and glad for everybody out there that's listening. Thank you. We need your support, and I'd like you to subscribe or hit the like button for us. I'm a veteran and need all the support I can get here building this channel, and JD here is a young and ambitious guy who's working hard to build this channel and has been for a long time as well. So we could use all the support we get, and we're going to be giving part of our proceeds to the Wounded Warrior Project as well. So you get any support we could get, we greatly appreciate it. And to everybody out there, hope you're doing well and have a great weekend.
All right, sounds good. See you guys later.